Welcome back, everybody, to the Right Path podcast, where being an author, an actual author, still matters. Folks, this is the podcast. It's for authors. It's about authors. It's done by an author, where we share all our journeys. We explore our creativity, but most importantly, we examine the why behind it all. Our guest today is an absolutely fabulous lady. I've had a blast talking to her for the last few minutes, just getting ready to hit record. So I cannot wait to bring this lady to you. She is a mother of four. She's a grandmother to 11. Yes, I said 11. And she is the author of the book, The Girl of Many Crowns, which you're going to hear all about today. And the story behind it is amazing. Please welcome to the show, Deborah D.H. Morris. Deborah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Rory.
I'm so glad we finally got to connect. Let's address right off the top the Deborah DH thing, okay?
Yeah.
And let everybody know what the deal is. Your name's Deborah, but
hmm
you publish under DH. Tell everybody why.
Well, there are several who named Deborah Morris. It's not an uncommon name
Mhm.
who have published before, and I didn't want to be confused with them. So when I was doing a search to see how many there were with the name Deborah Morris, I thought maybe I need to just use my initials. So that's what I did.
Nice. I love that you put research into such a detail like that, like right out of the gate. Did somebody give you that idea? Was that something you came up with all
No,
on your own? I'm just curious.
I just uh, I just came up with it on my own because I thought, what if there are several people with my name? Would it be easy to find my book?
Got it. Got it. Well, that's a great lesson for everybody listening. We have a lot of soon to be authors in our audience. And so, whenever something like that comes up, where someone like you has that experience, that's something for people to think about, isn't it? In terms of how they're going to market
Definitely.
even their name.
Yeah. I could not find another D.H. Morris. So I was very, very glad. I said, okay, I'm going.
There you go. Research wins every time. All right. Let that be a lesson to all of you folks, okay? All of you John Smiths out there getting ready to write a book. Yeah, you may want to come up with something else. I got you. All right. Deborah, the girl of many crowns. First of all, just wow. The story itself, amazing. The story behind it, frankly, even more so. I was just shocked when I started getting all these facts from you about how this all worked. Tell everybody the story about how this book came to be.
Well, years ago, when my husband and I were first married, my aunt, who was the family genealogist and was looking for someone to pass all her information to who might carry on the job of being the family genealogist, since her kids weren't interested, she gave us as a wedding gift huge book of all of our family tree. And one of the people on the family tree. I had heard before that there was royalty if you went back far enough. A lot of people have that, but one of the royals really interested me because it didn't look right. It looked wrong, and I figured there must be a mistake, and I've got to fix it. That's going to be my job if I take over this genealogy. I found that a young girl, 12-year-old girl, first daughter of the first king of France, was married at 12 years old to the 50-year-old king of Wessex. Then a year and a half later, all of a sudden, someone with the same birthday, someone with the same name, is married to his son. That didn't sound right. And then about 2 years later, 3 years later, yes, probably three and a half years later, I find someone with the same name, same birthday, married to the Count of Flanders, named Baldwin Ironarm. And I thought, how can this be? Could she really have, can this be the same person, or did everybody who had a daughter born in that year name them the same thing? I, I thought there's got to be a mistake. This is just odd. So I started doing the research hoping to correct the mistake. And instead, I found a very inspiring and touching story of a young girl who is used as a political pawn at first and becomes the first anointed Queen of Wessex, the second anointed Queen of Wessex, and then decides to take her life into her own hands and defy her father when she is widowed twice by the age 15. And at age 16, when she returns to France without her father's permission, and he says, I'm going to start looking for a third marriage for you, she says, no, I'm done. I've done my part for the kingdom, and I would rather not marry again, unless it's my choice. So he locks her as a prisoner in the palace at Senlis. And he says, you will stay there for the rest of your life or until you agree to marry whoever I say you will marry, because you don't have the right to choose. Hmm. So the book follows her story, but it also follows, and it actually begins with the story of a powerful knight named Baldwin Ironarm of Flanders. He's the son of the Count of Flanders, who is dead. And he goes to King Charles's court in hopes of being a warrior. He's young, 16 years old, but a man by law. And instead, the king asks him, or has him become the companion of Judith's younger brother. Judith is 11 at the time. Her brother is 9, but the brother named Louis, and historians refer to him as Louis the Stammerer, he needs a mentor. He needs a friend, someone who is actually powerful in fighting, who can help him develop skills in that area. This is what King Charles is very disappointed in Louis. He's not the son he was looking for. He wanted a warrior son and didn't get that. So as I was doing the research, and these are all ancestors, and as I was doing the research on these people, they came to life for me. And I was amazed at how much material was out there on the 9th century. Volumes. Of course, most of it's written in Latin. So I had to rely mainly on that which was translated into English or German. I lived in Germany for 12 years, and I'm able to read and speak German. Well, it's pretty rusty now because I've been back for a while. And my husband and my son, fluent in German. So between the 3 of us, we were able to translate a lot of stuff from the German into English. The Latin, I had to rely on English scholars who have done extensive research into Charles, who historians refer to as Charles the Bald, although he probably wasn't bald. But they had so many Charleses, they had to distinguish them in some way. And that was what they came up with for him based on a silly poem a jester wrote about him. But anyway, every character in the book, except for a few servants, are actual people. There are a few even conversations that we found actual conversations that we were able to lift and adapt into the book. Every event pretty much was, every major event actually happened. We found translations of her coronation ceremony, her consecration ceremony. We found the book itself. So I guess I've gone into the research aspect of this.
That's
I
wonderful.
love
Yeah,
research,
I
and I'm
love
kind of
it.
a research geek.
I love that. That's why I'm letting you go because I love hearing this part of it. So, don't let me stop you.
So the research, I could just keep researching and not even write. I just enjoy it so much. But the research that I based the actual plot on was taken from the Annals of St. Burton. St. Burton is an abbey kind of in the Flanders, northern France area. And the monks were the ones who kept the histories during those days. And they almost never wrote about women. They weren't interested in writing about women. They were more interested in just writing about the wars and sometimes the weather and the politics and what was happening to the royalty. So if they were writing about women, the women were doing something a little unusual, scandalous, maybe even in their eyes. And Judith was one of those. She was, the fact that she even was bold enough to tell her father, no, I'm not going to marry at your command, even though she had twice before, was enough to put her in the history books
Wow.
for them. So I followed 7 years and I just went year by year, and just whatever the monks said happened that year, I tried to flesh out and make dramatic for the reader so
Right.
that that this is actual history taking place. And if there was a gap, like of months, and I needed to fill in, I would think, oh, this was Christmas. How did they celebrate Christmas? What were their traditions? What did they eat? And then I would fill that in and just place them in that setting. But everything, including, like, her mother was known for, Queen Ermintrude was famous for her embroidery work. So I knew that. So I had to incorporate that into the story somehow. So
Wow.
just little details like that. Um, they become, actually, when Baldwin sees Judith again after she returns to France, being twice widowed at the age of 16 and being imprisoned, and he sees her he and her brother, as he is her brother's companion, come to visit her at the palace in Sunley and spend Christmas with her. And they've known each other before because he was her brother's companion, even if it was only briefly. They knew each other before, but now she's a woman and he's older and it's different. And they're in love very quickly.
Gotcha.
And so he wants to help her escape from the palace. Now, history tells us that she escapes dressed as a peasant girl, as one of the servants. In my mind, she could not have possibly done that without the help of a servant, at least one,
Hmm.
who had those clothing, who would have known that she wasn't there didn't say anything until it was too late. So that is one of the major characters that I did create, was her own personal serving maid who was loyal to her, and she follows we follow their relationship through the book as well.
Got it. Well, and that brings it together and adds the story,
Yeah.
to what you're doing. So, I mean, I have a bunch of questions for you here. You unpacked
Okay.
a lot. I love that. The first of all, for folks who have not read the book and who are just listening to this for the first time and are getting ready to go get the book because they are hearing how interesting it is, this is. Would you categorize this is not a biography, for instance? This is historical fiction. Am I right?
It is. I started it out writing it as a biography,
Hmm.
and then with footnotes, everything. And then I realized this is the life isn't there.
Yeah.
It's got portions that are alive, and then you get portions that are just kind of dead boring. So I realized if anyone was going to read this, it would have to read like fiction.
Nice.
And I took out every single thing that I felt like the reader did not absolutely have to know at some point to make the story make sense.
Beautiful.
And try to, put more passion into the dialogue than I had to make up dialogue for the
Right.
most part. As I said, we found a few conversations, but those were between like the Archbishop and Louis the German, the king of the German part of, and then found a wonderful quote from King Charles, which he gives in a rousing speech to his warriors before they go into battle in what seems like is going to be a hopeless war. And instead, I used his same words and made it a conversation between him and Baldwin Ironarm.
Mm.
Baldwin Ironarm, with him, I had to create more, mainly because he wasn't royal. So they didn't really write about him much. We
Yeah.
know a few things about him. We know he was respected by everybody for his fighting ability and also by the Vikings. And he had actually worked with and fought against the Vikings. He was the only one who actually had any success in defending France's borders against the Vikings.
Hmm.
And they really respected him. Um, but we also know that he was the companion of Louis, the stammerer. So what I did was everywhere Louis was, I just put Baldwin in that situation with him because I figure as his companion, he was probably there. And what would he be doing? He would be protecting the king because he was a provincial king. Even at the age of 9, he becomes a provincial king of Neustria,
Mm.
which was a part then of France, or Francia, as it was
Okay.
called then. And so that's how I created Baldwin's story. I just put him in all the events as protector, mentor, what his job was
Right.
in with Louis.
Now you were a playwright before you wrote this book, correct?
I did write a play and it
Okay.
was published and performed. And I my undergraduate degree was in theater and in music, and I did quite a bit of acting and musicals and variety of things. So that was one of my first loves. I went on to work on my master's in English because I love literature as well. And I used all those, I actually used my dramatic background, I think, to good use in my writing technique. So what for me, my whole process is more one of trying to dramatize history rather than to create. And I know a lot of historical fiction people will take a person who is completely created, made up, and then place them in situations with famous people or in famous situations.
Sure.
And this is kind of the opposite. I'm taking real people, real events, the famous people, trying to put in as many characteristics as I can find written about them and try to just dramatize it. So a lot of times when I'm when I'm trying to come up with a scene, I don't have to create the event. I'm trying to describe the event or bring it to life.
There it is. Yeah.
So I would think about it for maybe a few days, say, okay, this is what happened next. It's amazing. And then I would think, how did that look? What happened? How did they get there? And a lot of times I'd sleep on it. And when I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I would try not to wake up my husband. I'd pull out my computer, not turn on the light, just lift up the lid and start typing. And some of my best inspiration will come in the middle of the night as I kind of like I dreamt about it, and I could envision it almost in movie form. So that is more my process, at least for this book.
Love that. I do make a habit of asking people about that. So I appreciate that you just like went right there. Here's my process. This is what I have to do. I do the same thing trying to keep my wife from having to wake up when I'm doing all my stuff in the middle of the night that I should never be up in the middle of the night for. But I understand. I'm curious because character development, of course, is such a big deal in all of our writing. Anytime we try and do anything, whether it's fiction or even in nonfiction, trying to just develop the character in a way that the reader wants to read about it. So it's not like a newsreel, and telling somebody, recounting facts. How difficult or how different is it to develop a character when you actually have like half the story already written
Yeah.
that you have to stay within? And then you have to like fill in the other strands of the DNA almost, as opposed to I have carte blanche. I can create this character any way I want. And if this part of this character is not matching this part, I can just change part of it because it's a made up person. Which one's harder, which one's easier, and what's the difference? I'm just curious.
Well, perhaps it depends on your process, but for me, I just went by this is the decision they made. This is what they arrived at. Why? And I try to get within that person. This again comes down to my training as an actor.
Mm. Okay.
You have to approach the character as if everything makes sense to them. Looking at it from a distance, you're going to say, why did he do that? That was crazy. But in that character's mind, it's not. It makes perfect sense to them. So,
Mm.
what is their motivation? And how do I capture that? Because they did it. They're probably not doing it just so they can spite this other person, although sometimes that is the motivation. A
Mm.
lot of it you have to guess at, but there are also many little hints along the way. For instance, at the end of the book, I include an appendix, which tells, since my book only covers 7 years, it tells everything that pretty much happened to all the major characters up to their death. So you know what happens to them in their life. One of Judith's brothers, who is included in the book, his name is Young Charles. I'm telling you, there are so many Charleses in here. I would love to have changed the names, but I can see why historians had to give them all Charles the Fat, Charles the Good, Charles the Younger, Charles the Bald,
Right.
because they had to distinguish them. So, but her brother, young Charles, he dies very young, actually. This is kind of a spoiler, but if you know history, you can always look it up. So he he it's hard not to have spoilers when you're actually writing about real people, because anybody can look it up.
This is true. Right. History's already written. Right.
So I heard that he was a jokester and he loved playing pranks on people. And he dies at 19. And the reason why he died was he was out on a hunting party. Absolutely loved hunting. That was his jam. And he's at one point he springs out and tries to surprise one of his nobles.
While
And
they're
the
hunting.
noble, by a reaction, just goes and whacks him in the head. Really lays him
Hmm.
out, and he was probably in a coma, but he died about 2-3 days later.
Oh my gosh. Not the type of thing you want to do while you're hunting with people. He's lucky to get
Yes.
shot.
So I took
Yeah.
took
Oh my
that
goodness.
and had him every opportunity he had. He wanted to go hunting, and had him as more lighthearted of the brothers, a little bit of a prankster, not as serious. So little things like that, I think, can give you a clue into your character that
Right.
you can take and run with.
That's really amazing. All of this that you've done then is in fact based on research that you've
Mhm.
then taken and used it to your own means.
Yes.
Um, and just in this short period of time talking about it, the amount of research that you've done is already sounding like it's just incredible. How long did this take you to deconstruct this whole thing before you even started writing the dramatic part? I mean, what was the time journey like for this project?
Well, actually, I started researching decades ago, and that's when the story took hold on me because I thought, what would it have been like to be a 12-year-old girl who's being married off to a 50-year-old widower, and you have to leave your country, different language, different customs, just thrown into that. And that kind of stayed with me for a long time. I did a bunch of research, but I didn't finish the research. I just thought, wow, this is a story that really touched my heart. Never forgot about it. Then COVID hit.
Good old COVID.
And what else am I going to do? My husband pulled out the old research and said, you still have this 30 years later or whatever. He says, you going to do anything with it?
Oh
And
wow.
so I started into research more and more. It was crazy going into the libraries at the local um, university during COVID. You had to wear the mask. You couldn't. They didn't even want me to stand next to my husband so we could compare books we were looking, which I thought was kind of crazy. 6 feet apart.
Right. You can go home together and sit on the
Yeah.
couch, but I know. We could do that all day.
And
Okay.
then ordering books, rare books, through my local library, who had to borrow it from other libraries, waiting for weeks, trying to find out what happened to this this king. All I know is that he died, and I can't go any further in this story without finding out how he died or who killed him or how they killed him. I'm waiting for weeks and wondering if the book that I ordered was going to have that research in it. And yes, it did, and shocked me. And a wonderful story of an assassination plot and an assassination. But so I really hit it hard during COVID, and that's when I started writing.
Nice. Okay. I mean, this a long-term project to get this published. So
Yeah.
congratulations. That's amazing. There really is that you stuck with it all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. Now your background with the acting and the previous writing and that sort of thing, I mean, clearly that helped you to put this book out and to accomplish this
Yeah.
project. In you know, did that help you at all in terms of getting the book out, or was the publishing of the book like a brand new animal to you?
Yes. And I would say that the hardest part is what comes after. Because once it's out, it's getting people to hear about it. And
Yeah.
you can go on, podcasts, you have your they expect you to have social media campaigns, which I'm not very good at, and things like that to promote your own book. You have
Mhm.
to. And so, um, and, showing up at like a book signing, local book stores and stuff like that. It's not the easiest thing for me
Okay.
because I don't know. I just have I'm not sure why.
That's
it's
very honest. All
it's a
right.
lot easier to write it than to promote it.
Wow. Okay. Hey, I appreciate you being honest about that. The now, did you use a traditional publisher? Did you go with a hybrid? Did you
Hybrid,
self-publish? You hybrided.
hybrid.
I see. Okay. I wondered because when you said that, they want you to do this, so I said, okay, sounds like there's a
Yes,
publisher involved, but you're doing all your own marketing in this particular hybrid
yes,
situation, it sounds like.
absolutely.
Okay. All right. So you didn't have much of a social media presence prior to the book launch, it sounds like.
Still
So
don't.
you're
I'm
creating all of this
trying.
as you go. I
My
gotcha.
daughter and my granddaughters are the ones who try to help me with it
Uh,
and encourage me to do it. And that's a New Year's resolution.
there are courses you can take on how to learn that, and you can pay companies to do that for you.
Maybe I need to do that.
So just a couple of mentions there, yeah, we all would love to learn it and do it ourselves, but I mean that's just not always as easy as it sounds, is it?
No, that
Yeah,
is not one of my talents. I'm
gotcha.
I struggle with technology. I'm old, so what can I say? I didn't grow up with computers.
Oh, goodness
I
gracious. You're not old. Give me a break. Come on. Come on. You're never too old to learn something new on social media, especially.
true,
So don't worry
true.
about that at all. Oh, my goodness. All right. So you went through the publishing process. How did you go about picking that publisher? What was it about the hybrid thing that
No,
made you say,
I
I'm going to do
actually
this?
went through a couple of mistakes before
Oh,
that. So I don't know. It's been a painful process. I My daughter was interested in indie publishing,
mhm.
publish something herself. So she asked me if I would go to a conference with her because she didn't want to go alone. And while I was there, I found it fascinating. I wasn't thinking about it for myself, but they made a good case for doing it. And there were a number of different publishers there of various kinds. Um, and they really sold me on the ease and I think for I really didn't make complete push or a persistent push at traditional publishing,
Okay.
mainly because the feedback I got was we don't want a strong male character saving a female. And I said, but he's not saving her.
That's not your book at all.
He's she these are two people who come together and together accomplish something, and together they become the founders of Bruges in Belgium, and they become the founding couple there. They still are celebrated to this day. They still have uh, have statues to them and tell about some of their exploits. And there's a scene in there where Baldwin, as they're fleeing from King Charles and his troops, his men who trying to pursue them and capture them and possibly put Baldwin to death, where Baldwin has to fight a bear who is trying to attack Judith on horseback. So, and in Bruges, they still talk about that bear. This is how many hundreds of years later they sell Bear of Bruges beer. They sell Bear of Bruges chocolate. And it's all because of the story of Judith and Baldwin Ironarm. And that's part of their story, part of Bruges' story. And Bruges, I don't know if you've ever been there, but to me, it's one of the most beautiful little cities in Europe.
So it wasn't that a publisher told you this. It was that you had heard that that was kind of where publishers were in their thinking.
No,
So
I
you
was
went a different
told
direction?
that by agents
Oh, by
and
agents. Oh, no kidding.
agents. They said, nope, we don't even want to represent this because this is not where publishing is. And I
Wow.
actually was working with one in New York, a publisher's, I can't remember what he was, but anyway, his um, he runs writers workshops,
Okay.
and he loved the idea of the story, and he was going to take me from page my first draft to publication, promised, for $4,000. So I wrote the check for $4,000. And when I wouldn't change the story, I said, no, this is what happened. And for me, that's important. I want the actual history in there. He says, no, that's not what they want to hear. If you want to be published, if you want to be an author, you have to write what they want to hear.
Oh.
And he says, and it
Oh.
doesn't matter if you make up stuff. And I thought, these are my ancestors. What if I
Ugh.
get on the other side and I actually meet one of them? I want to
Oh.
be able to say, I did my best to get it right. I don't want to say I made up all this stuff about it. That sounds silly, maybe,
Oh
but
my goodness.
for me, that was important that I get history as close as possible based on my own envisioning of why they did certain things and how it all came together.
Good for you. Holy cow. I love one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is because I get to hear these stories also from authors, so that
And
other
he
authors
gave
can
me
hear
my
this stuff.
$4,000 back.
Did
He
he
said, well,
really?
then you're not going to work with me, are you? And he says, you could have this as a series. You could have what happens after these 7 years. And I said, but they stopped writing about her. And I would all be made up. That doesn't matter. It's so great. And I said, you're missing the point of what I wanted to tell I
Right.
wanted to tell their story, not some made up thing just far afield from what really happened. I
Wow.
think their story is exciting enough that it grabbed me for more than 30 years. And it's worthy of telling their story.
That's amazing. First, I'm really glad to hear that you got the money back. I really am
Yeah,
because
no
I thought that
problem.
was a horrible end of the story. I'm like, oh no, don't tell me
No,
that.
no,
Um,
no,
Cautionary tale averted. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that.
no. He was
Um,
very respectable guy. He is. He
uh,
just, that's not what they want.
wow, could not wrap his head around the fact that this mattered to you as the author.
No.
Hmm. Deborah, good for you. I mean, honestly, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's anybody can, and I hate to use the term, but sell out to like commercialism, because we all have to sell books. Okay, we're all trying to sell our books, but from the core, I mean, the book has to come from someplace, And if you are that devoted and you've spent all these years doing this, then you're doing it for a reason, right? I mean, to put this book out.
Absolutely.
In That leads me to my next question. If anytime anybody's writing a book, I find that usually we are writing a book to someone or for someone. Um, you were so dedicated to keep this story together. Um, who were you imagining that you were writing this book to or for when you were putting all that work into it?
Originally, I thought just my family. They need to know. It's
Hmm.
such an incredible story. And I found it so inspirational. And it ends happy, which is rare.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
and I was I was just amazed at all the things that I found. But this may sound strange, but I kept feeling in the back of my mind a little 12-year-old girl from the ninth century saying, please tell my story. Please tell my story. Writing it for her and for any other young girl who may have felt like she had no control over her life. And then finally blossoms into a woman who can stand on her own and find a man who is willing to be her partner and equally they work together to accomplish something great.
That's a very powerful message. I love that. That's great. That really is. All of this just really does come through, when you're talking to you. And I appreciate you sharing all of this with us about the book. Um, the book's out now. Yes. So it's out there.
Yes, yes.
Um, what has to happen in Deborah's mind, in Deborah's heart, for this book to be considered by you to be considered a success?
I love the way it looks. I love the fact that it's out there. I just wish I could get the message out to all those who love history and love a good adventure story set in the Viking era that's actually real, that really happened, and want to know more about history. If I think if they were to read it, that would be for me satisfaction. And those who have and have expressed that to me and say, "Oh, we want another book from you," and that is what I would like from it, is to know that people really appreciate and understand this young woman's history, this young man's history. We actually have a powerful male character here who is a hero, and there's nothing toxic about his masculinity. And there's nothing toxic about his trying to protect her and her brother. And there's nothing more beautiful than a romance that is built on mutual respect and caring for one another, I think.
Love that. Love that. That again, that comes through in your writing 100%. And I love that. I do have one more question for you, but before I do that, because I sometimes I forget this, and I don't ever want to forget this. How can people find you, reach you, find out more about the book, go purchase the book, give us your contact info. Then I'm going to ask you the last question.
Well, the book is available on Amazon, of course, and it's available on Barnes and Noble, other online areas. There's a list, but I really, and as I said, I'm really bad at marketing, so I don't remember all the names on
I'm
the
trying to
list.
help you.
I know. And it's on Audible
Okay.
as well. And they can always go to newclassicspublishing.com, and they can, if they want to read a little more about it, but um, and I am working on a prequel. I don't have a sequel because I don't have any history written about her. Once she stopped being outrageous, then they stopped writing about her. And she
Right.
was no longer one of the royals because she gave up her last crown
Hmm.
to be a countess instead of a queen. But her grandmother, she was named for her grandmother. And that, her grandmother, Judith, had kind of a Cinderella story where her grandfather, Louis the Pious, he was the son of Charlemagne. And when his wife dies, he was very pious, was going to go into an abbey, and his counselors talk him into letting them have a bride show and have him pick if he likes any of the women that they invited from all over the empire, all the nobles, if they had eligible daughters, to bring them. And one daughter that is brought is Judith of Bavaria, and she was chosen for her beauty, her intelligence, and her musical talent. And they actually had, she was young, early 20s. He was 40 something. They had a very good relationship and seemed to have loved each other. When she has, so that's the Cinderella part of it. But when she gets pregnant, all of a sudden tensions rise in the kingdom because he has three grown sons who have already divided up the kingdom in future, who's going to rule what. And what if she has a son? Well, she doesn't. The first child is a daughter, but now they know she can have a child. The second child is King Charles, who is Charles the Bald,
I
Judith's
see the
father.
connection. Okay, gotcha.
And when he is born, that causes a civil war. And they try to destroy her. They try to destroy the baby. They lock up their father, Louis the Pious. They imprison him. It's just one plot after another, and it's very convoluted. And she spends her whole time trying to save her son, Charles, and get some kind of inheritance for him, which he ultimately does in the form of Francia, the part that becomes modern France.
Nice.
And so that is that. I got quite a bit of research, and I've written the first couple of chapters, but I have to keep going. So
Gotcha.
that is, don't have anything for a sequel, but I do have something that I can use for a prequel.
So there's a prequel coming. I already want to order it. So that sounds fantastic. I love it. I love it. I don't suppose you have a date on that or any kind of time frame when it may be available. Is it next year or what are you thinking?
That's a good
Putting
question.
you on the spot here.
A lot of times when you rely this heavily on research, a lot of times it depends on whether you can get your hands on the research that you've
Hmm.
been looking for. For instance, I ordered a book through interlibrary loan that I need a month ago, and I still haven't heard from them.
Ah, sure. Well, that's
Frustrating.
fair. That's fair. I understand. I
I want
understand.
it to be as accurate as possible.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, that's where your heart is. So I totally understand.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be keeping our eyes out for that. That's for sure. All right. And good luck with that. So,
Thank
all
you.
right. So final question is through the process, whether it be the writing process or the creative or the research or the publishing, what is your best piece of advice for someone from a published author like yourself, for someone who is not yet a published author, but really wants to be?
For me, I would say write what you love to read.
Hmm,
If you love reading history, if you love reading science fiction, actually, I love reading all of it, but I love historical fiction too. But I'm I just an avid reader, so I love reading. But write what you love to read because there's got to be an audience out there for that.
nice. That's
Otherwise, that wouldn't be there for you to read it, would it?
exactly. Nice. More research. I like that. Even the final question circles back to research. That is amazing. All right. All right. Folks, mom of four, grandmother to 11. I'm so jealous. Author of The Girl of Many Crowns, Deborah D.H. Morris. Deborah, thank you so much for everything that you brought today. Your story, your openness, your authenticity. I had a fantastic time and you were absolutely delightful. Thanks for coming here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rory. It's been so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Folks, this has been another just incredible episode of the Right Path podcast, where truth still matters and words still have power. This is the place for authors who know that every page is a step forward. So let's lift each other up and let's dust each other off and let's all continue to move forward together.